Inspire is a revolutionary FDA-approved implantable device for sleep apnea. Controlled with a small remote, Inspire delivers mild stimulation.
Welcome, welcome.
Giving you and your partner the restful sleep you need for a healthier, happier 2018. Inspire is FDA-approved and offered at over 150 leading medical centers across the country. Join the growing number of people who are treating their sleep apnea with Inspire. Visit InspireSleep.com to learn more, review important safety information, and to find a doctor in Los Angeles who can help determine if Inspire is right for you. The freedom to sleep like everyone else is just a click away. That's InspireSleep.com.
On the chilly side tonight, lows upper 30s to mid 40s.
We were supposed to have like 11 chicks today. It's day 21. And we are standing by. Because it's cold. We got to get them under a heat lamp. After the brooding hen that's sitting on them is going to sit on them, for a couple days. But we have a heat lamp and everything. But it was 29 when I left, so it's cold in that barn. I'm representing Humboldt State tonight, by the way. Seebeck! What's up in Seebeck?
Saving sellers on average $25,000 as a fully licensed brokerage. Rex lists on top real estate websites like Zillow and Trulia. Rex uses advanced digital marketing strategies to find qualified buyers for your home. To see if you qualify, call 213-9886-REX. 213-988-6739. Your dedicated Rex team handles everything from photography and open houses all the way to negotiating offers and closing paperwork. If you want to pay just 2%, you've got to sell your home with Rex. To see if you qualify, call 213-9886-REX. 213-9886-REX.
Yeah, this is this lanyard is actually from the Skunk Works. When I had a tour, I asked the guy who was giving me the tour, I love the Ting Tings. And so we were leaving, and they had all those, U.S. government skillcraft, mechanical pencils and things like that. And I said, hey, can I grab one of those, as a souvenir? It didn't say Skunk Works, it just said, U.S. government. And the guy said, no, you can't take anything out of here. And I said, well, what about your lanyard? And he said, well, you can't take this. And he said, however, they do have a gift shop, and you can buy these. So he said, that'll be your souvenir, and he gave me $5. He said, go buy a lanyard. And then he said, I'll give you the new one, you'll give me yours. So this is actually, and it's one of those things where I have a clearance, and I can't say anything more except that I took a tour, not of Air Force Plan 42, but just a certain part of a Lockheed facility.
But there's one thing Americans never give up: AM/FM radio. In fact, TV reaches 86% of Americans. Radio commercials, just like this one, will reach 93% of Americans in every single week of 2018. So if you want to reach more moms, fans, teens, professionals, shoppers, and well, more pretty much everyone, radio's the way to do it. Make a resolution to go to iHeartMedia.com and put radio to work for your company in 2018.
Purity?
I want to talk about
yeah.
an only truly non-surgical face and neck tightening procedure that I trust actually work for you. Offered exclusive.
So we'll be playing the Ting Tings. I'm so used to the camera being over here. How come I did it like that? Oh, you're in Wasilla. They're in the Matsu Valley, in the Mataniska-Susitna Valley, eh? The Matsu Valley.
Dr. Rispler and the team at LDI for a 100% free consultation. 800-606-6000.
They call it the Matsu Valley, but it's Mataniska-Susitna.
Or visit getldi.com.
I fished in Alaska 3 summers out of Egegik and Dutch Harbor. Egegik.
On this week's Jesus Christ Show. The Jesus Christ Show. Tomorrow morning at 6 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk. They call me hell. They call me Stacy. They call me hell. They call me Jane.
Oh, really? Where? You know, I'm from PA. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here. Live until midnight, and I'm streaming live at unsheepyourself.com. Unsheep with a P, unsheepyourself.com, because you don't want to be a sheep. And we got a guy in Alaska. We've got people from all over the country streaming. So good for ye. So the FBI and working jointly with our law enforcement partners, which I assume they mean locally, like Pasadena, took into custody without incident a pair of individuals this morning. And the individuals are charged with violating the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've got to bone up on that. I don't know what the deal is there. But I'll look into it. But anyway, what is a MMIC? A monolithic microwave integrated circuit, which has civilian and military uses, which they always have to say. Federal authorities this morning arrested 2 local men on federal charges that allege a scheme to illegally obtain technology and integrated circuits with military applications that were exported to a Chinese company without the required export license. The main guy, the 62-year-old Yichi Shi, is an electrical engineer, part-time LA resident. The other guy, 63, Kiet On Mai of Pasadena, I don't know his background, were arrested this morning without incident by federal agents. They worked. The 2 men previously worked together at 2 different companies, and if I were those 2 different companies, I would be going over everything that these guys ever touched. Obviously, right now. The criminal complaint was unsealed this morning. It charges them with conspiracy. As I say, the 62-year-old Mr. Shi, S-H-I-H, was also charged with violating the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a federal law that makes illegal, among other things, certain unauthorized exports. The complaint alleges that the 2 men conspired to illegally provide Mr. Shi with unauthorized access to a protected computer of a U.S. company that manufactured specialized high-speed computer chips known as monolithic microwave integrated circuits, often called MMICs. The conspiracy count also alleges that the 2 men engaged in mail fraud, wire fraud, and international money laundering to further the scheme, because they were being funded by China. Any surprise there? China has to fund their spies somehow. And so these guys were coming up with fake names for fake bank accounts and things like that. Then also by mail fraud, they lied to the company about, we promise that the chip that you make us will never leave the United States. The complaint outlines a scheme in which Mr. Shi used an LA-based company that he controlled, Pullman Lane Productions, LLC. Pullman Lane Productions. Anyone heard of it? I'll find a street address here in just a second. To funnel funds provided by Chinese entities, meaning the Ministry for State Security, the Chinese Security Service, to finance the manufacturing of MMICs by the victim company. So they went to them, they looked legit. They said, we need this chip, it's for, it'll never leave the U.S., and so the company thought that they were doing real business. The computer chips at the heart of the case were shipped to Chengdu G.A. Stone Technology Company, CGTC, a Chinese company that established a MMIC manufacturing facility in Chengdu, China. Xi was the president of CGTC, which in 2014 was placed on the Commerce Department's entity list, according to the affidavit, due to its involvement in activities contrary to the national security and foreign policy interests of the U.S. So the Chinese have a full court press. They have a top to bottom espionage operation for industrial espionage. The Russians did it too. The Russians stole stuff. The Russians stole, blueprints that were. There oftentimes people think that the Russians stole the blueprints to the space shuttle because the Russian answer to the space shuttle, the Buran, bore such a close resemblance to it. There were a couple key differences, and after all, form follows function. I mean, it has to re-enter the atmosphere like an airplane, and it has to have a cargo bay and all that. But the Russians were able to access pretty much an open source the space shuttle. NASA's not a military agency, and they were able to access much of the plans through legal means. The Chinese, on the other hand, they want military stuff, and they do something even simpler than send hookers. This is not a case of like American engineers going to China and being blackmailed after they get with a Chinese hooker working for the Chinese government. It's simpler than that. They simply come here on visas. They come here legally, and they establish residence over years and years and years. And either the Chinese government sent them here with a plan, or the Chinese government approaches them. Because, keep in mind, there are hundreds of thousands of Chinese immigrants in Southern California working very hard, living the American dream, probably want to become citizens. But out of that pool of hundreds of thousands, there are many, 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 many of them who could use a down payment for a house, or they could use some money to get out of debt or whatever. And this is where the Chinese are brilliant, because they know where these guys work. They're not stupid. And you underestimate the Chinese at your own peril, as the F-35 finds out. But are there enough FBI agents for this kind of thing? No, there's not. Here's the punchline: it's almost pure luck. And as I say, I get the feeling that the company tipped off the FBI here. The FBI did not start this investigation on their own. The company tipped them off because there are more people working for the Chinese security services in Southern California than there are FBI agents. So that's why I've told you, the notion that Jeff Sessions is going to have the FBI investigating large legal pot grows in California is ludicrous. They just don't have the time. All right, when we come back, Turkey has invaded, again, Syria, shades of 2 years ago. But Turkey looks to be, at this point, growing their own country. So I'll tell you why that might be the deal right after this. The World at War. All you need to know right here in one show. Brian Suits in here live until midnight. KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news.
Police in Beverly Hills say they're looking into a shooting they said may have been part of a road rage incident.
Oh, somebody sent me this book, Dirty War, Rhodesia and Chemical Biological Warfare, 1975-1980. First comprehensive look at Rhodesia's top-secret use of chemical biological warfare during their long counterinsurgency against native African nationalists. Well, that tells me something right there, because the guys fighting Rhodesia were communists. Robert Mugabe is not a just a nationalist. Michael Chappé is doing, better. So he is doing much better. I'm going to see if I can book on the Silu Scouts. I'm trying to think. There were several written by actual members of the Sea Lou Scouts. Well, yeah, I'm going hatless because, you know, I have awesome hair and I never show it off. Like, I'm not some bald guy. I have hair. I need to show my hair. Yeah, he worked, you know, last Sunday was his wife's funeral. And he came in, and it was absolutely, you know, I was blown away. I mean, it's absolutely blown away. So he did that, and actually the what was it? The week? Yeah, the night she died, or early in the day, or the night before, he was here the next day. And it's because he said, you know, he goes, you know, they don't have kids, and he said, I'm just sitting there at home alone, you know, and he wanted to come and do something familiar, which is what some people do. So, you know, all I can tell the guy is, you know, I still have no words. You know, I still don't know what to say. Because until you've been through something like that, you know, loss of a wife, you know, loss of a spouse, or loss of a kid, you know, I can't imagine that. So anyway, he's doing good. Let's see. Can I print this?
Cool conditions, lows tonight in the upper 30s to mid 40s, and then tomorrow in the afternoon, partly cloudy, highs ranging from the upper 50s to mid 60s, and partly cloudy and warmer for Monday, highs 60s to near 70 in inland areas on Monday. Then Tuesday and Wednesday should bring highs under partly cloudy skies, mostly in the 70s around the Southland. A little cooler with some clouds on Thursday, with a slight chance of rain by Thursday night. Right now, 44 in Fullerton, 47 in Orange, 39.
I'm going to print a map. So, just for streaming, you'll get a map briefing on Syria and Turkey.
Or you can go the extra step and get LifeLock to see more. Now, LifeLock is able to see things you might not be able to see, like your personal information being for sale on the dark web, or someone getting an online payday loan in your name. LifeLock uses proprietary technology to detect and alert you to a wide range of threats. And if you have a problem, one of LifeLock's restoration specialists will work to fix it. Now, no one can prevent all identity theft, monitor every transaction in every business. But with LifeLock, you'll have identity theft protection that allows you to see more identity threats. Membership start at $9.99 a month plus applicable taxes.
Is the computer ready?
Promo code handle.
Yeah.
Call 800-LifeLock promo code handle or go to lifelock.com promo code handle.
Hi, is this Linda?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Linda. I'm a helpful Southern California Honda person, and I'm calling to give you a random act of helpfulness. We heard you need some help sending your sister on a trip.
My sister has macular degeneration, and she has been going blind. I had asked her what she would like to see before she completely loses her eyesight. So she told us she wanted to see the Redwood Center. We could not make that happen right now. So
All right, I'm printing a map on Google Maps.
website.
Well, we're glad you did, because Honda would like to help. We're going to pay for your sister's trip to see the Redwoods.
Well, that'd be great. Because I feel really good. I'm like smiling ear to ear right now.
Today, we helped someone see nature, and we can help you too with a great deal on a reliable, award-winning Honda, like the CRV, Motor Trend's 2018 SUV of the year. Visit SoCalHondaDealers.com to find the helpful Honda dealer near you. Linda is a real person and was paid to be on the radio. 2018
Oh, Big Matt.
When you have a conversation about a story, you have the opportunity to ask questions about things that maybe you didn't see from your own perspective. Ask how someone else sees it from their perspective.
He got upset this week when
That is a really shitty tiny map.
And I said, but what about the sea turtles?
Gary
station.
Oh. Wow, that was my bad. Sorry. I said I was ready, and then I didn't hit play. And now I'm just talking all over the bumper. I gotta get my S together. It is KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. Brian Suits here until midnight, and Turkey began about a 12-hour air assault on a northwestern region of Syria called Afrin. There's a city called Afrin, and there's a district called Afrin. And of course, there is a decongestant called Afrin here in the United States. Well, two of those three things are being bombed and or invaded by Turkey today. Turkish armed forces rolled into Syria just a few hours ago. And if you're saying, wait a minute, is this a repeat show from 2 years ago? Turkey, as you recall, invaded Syria coming up on 2 years ago with their conventional army, and they pushed south along the Euphrates River, which roughly splits Syria into almost 2/3, 1/3. The Euphrates starts in Turkey, and as it goes through Syria into Iraq, about 2/3 of Syria approximately are to the west of the Euphrates River. The other third is to the east, and that is almost exclusively completely held by the Syrian Kurds, the YPG, as well as the Arab anti-Assad army that we put together called the Syrian Defense Forces, the SDF. The United States has said that our presence in that part of Syria is not going to change, that we're there for a while. And so along the Euphrates River, we are helping the SDF and the Syrian Kurds, the YPG, form more of a border. It's almost as if we're sponsoring a mini state out of Syria. Well, there is another island. There's another holdout of Syrian Kurds across the Euphrates River to the west in the mountains south of the Turkish border. And I'm having to use my words here because I'm trying to describe something here that's kind of difficult to describe. And I have a map. If you're streaming on unsheepyourself.com, you can see my attempt at explaining this via map. But in the northwest part of Syria, there is a huge region that the majority of ethnicity are Turkish. They're Turkmen. But and during the Ottoman Empire, of course, that was part of Turkey. But after World War I, and Turkey was one of the Lahu Azahars, then the French and the British carved up the Middle East. And out of that, you get a country called Syria. And in that country called Syria, in their northwest, you have about 1 million people who speak Turkish and are ethnic Turks. And never consider themselves Syrians, and they're not Arabs. Well, so this is the area where the Turkish army today has invaded. So they have already taken an area to the east of this, and they've been there now for 2 years. And now they're invading the adjacent region. They did the invasion all from Turkish territory, because Turkey nearly surrounds by 180 degrees this entire region. So this is where I have to go into your imagination and have you picture this. The Turkish border along Syria begins at the Mediterranean. Syria has actually a pretty short coastline, about 100 miles between. It's like a little piece is sticking out north of Lebanon and south of Turkey. And that is Syria's port areas where Tartus is, the Russian base, and all that. Damascus is in the southern part of the country just to the west of Lebanon. Damascus is landlocked. But Syria has a coastline. And at the north end of that coastline is a little bit of Turkey poking down. And as it goes up and begins going to the east to the end of Syria, it goes around the area called Afrin, the district and where the town is, which is its regional capital. Well, so the Turks were able to invade from Turkish territory directly into this area. F-16s were bombing targets in the city of Afrin, where the SDF and YPG forces are headquartered. So the Turks want a Kurdish-free border to the Euphrates, from the Mediterranean to the Euphrates. That is kind of the bottom line. That if Assad's forces were occupying this area, Turkey probably wouldn't care. But it is the YPG, the battle-hardened now YPG, with American supplies, and there are no American forces in this Western enclave. The American Special Operations guys, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and all that, are all east of the Euphrates. These Syrian Kurds, the YPG guys, were sort of out there on the ragged edge on their own, but they were very successful because they held this territory now for a couple of years. But to take you back 5 years, you'll recall that I called it 5 years ago, that Assad initially was fighting a rebellion, and the dozens of different militias came up with dozens of different names, but they were all called the Free Syrian Army, whatever that was. It was not an army. It was a bunch of Syrians who were not free yet, but they were in no way, shape, or form an army. So he was fighting those guys because they were the immediate threat to his stability there in his regime. When ISIS came into Syria because they needed chaos, and they found it, just like Al-Qaeda needed the Taliban. They needed a place where there was no law. So when ISIS came into Syria, it really wasn't the hottest iron in Assad's fire. And what he did was he contracted out the fighting to his Kurds in the far eastern part of Syria. And he made this deal with them. You take it, you keep it. But you fight ISIS because I can't do that now. And so when the Russians committed forces to Syria, it was to defeat the rebellion, not ISIS. And they've been very successful. We're the ones that bombed ISIS, and the YPG guys are the ones who did the ground fighting, along with the Syrian Defense Forces. Well, so tonight, who was attacking the Syrian Kurds? Well, it's the Turkish army, and then, oh, by the way, the Free Syrian Army. I've told you a million times, this is one of the most complex conflicts. This conflict kicks the crap out of Bosnia in the mid-90s, which was confusing enough to Americans. And that one was actually pretty simple. It was Earthlings, Romulans, and Vulcans. It was a three-way conflict. This one, not only do the loyalties shift and change, but the names of the groups shift and change. Because when the YPG were holding territory there in this northwestern part of Turkey, the Turks, President Erdogan, about 2 years ago, just decided, listen, this war south of us is winding down. I've enriched myself selling Syrian oil as a middleman from ISIS to the oil brokers, which he did, he and his son Bilal. We've also been supplying weapons to ISIS, or whoever we choose to this week. But the war is winding down, and when this war winds down, I'm going to have a buffer zone between me and Kurds in Syria. And so they invaded about 1.5 years ago into Syria, an area from the Euphrates River to the west. Now they're consolidating that. They're going to go all the way to the Mediterranean. And the Turks will say that it is for the ethnic expansion of Turkey, people who by all rights are ethnic Turks and were living under the yoke of Bashar Assad. They have a million ways that they can cover this. And to be to be perfectly honest with you, right now the world is spinning a little faster than it used to. And while this might have been frontline headlines 10 years ago, it barely even gets a mention on Drudge. But this is going to redraw the map in the Middle East. And what is the U.S. position on this? Well, the American-trained and American-led Syrian Defense Forces have said that they're going to fight the Turks. So we have two proxy armies, the Syrian Kurds and the Syrian Defense Forces, who have pledged to fight our NATO ally. And our advisors are with these guys. And so our NATO ally has put themselves in a position where A proxy army that we have been supporting them with airstrikes, etc., for 2 years is now going to go to war with our NATO ally. So, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has said no change in policy. So that's happening. All right. When we come back, some more out of Syria, and then also the International Hotel in Kabul appears to be a crap magnet. That's what some are saying, and maybe it's time to shut this place down after 4 or 5 coordinated attacks by the Taliban in less than a couple of years. It is a dark, secret place. Brian Suits in here until midnight. KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says lawmakers will vote Monday, 1 in the morning Eastern Time, on a 3-week continuing resolution to end the government shutdown. Republicans and Democrats blamed each other for the closure today with negotiations stalled. McConnell says lawmakers will reconvene tomorrow morning.
We do have nukes at Incirlik. There's probably a really, really great chance that we actually moved them last year.
The security forces at the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul is popular with foreigners. 5 people were apparently killed along with 3 shooters. Another denial for a Manson follower. Governor Brown has denied parole for Leslie Van Houten, the youngest follower of cult leader Charles Manson. Brown said Van Houten still lays too much of the blame of the series of murders of 1969 on Manson. Manson died 2 months ago at age 83.
I forgot the brand of solar phone charger I use. I'll get into that tomorrow on YouTube. Yeah, my old-timey mic would actually fit because it is an XLR mic, so it actually would fit.
Controlled with a small remote, Inspire delivers mild stimulation to keep your airway open throughout the night, giving you and your partner the restful sleep you need for a healthier, happier 2018. Inspire is FDA approved and offered at over 150 leading medical centers across the country. Join the growing number of people who are treating their sleep apnea with Inspire. Visit InspireSleep.com to learn more, review important safety information, and to find a doctor in Los Angeles who can help determine if Inspire is right for you. The freedom to sleep like everyone else is just a click away. That's InspireSleep.com.
Mostly clear for the overnight hours. Lows upper 30s to mid 40s, and then tomorrow a couple of more clouds with highs in the upper 50s to mid 60s. Traffic from your helpful SoCal Honda Traffic Center. Car fire in South LA on the 110.
That's on the northbound side at the 105, taking up your right lane back in the up from El Segundo Boulevard. Heavy drive in Hollywood, 101 south between Vermont Avenue and Benton Way. And in Riverside, a wreck on the 60 west at Valley Way. That's on the right lane.
This report is brought to you by
I don't
California. KFI in the sky helps get you there faster.
plan on talking about the government shutdown. Because it doesn't affect it doesn't affect day-to-day operations at the Pentagon.
You know you should do it. Are you ready to start making great financial decisions? Stop the guesswork over finances and investing in retirement. Get financially organized.
So I shan't. But as you see, Lebanon here, Syria has a very short coastline, and the Turks have invaded along these 2 axes. So it appears that what they want is they want the entire area from west of the Euphrates all the way to the Mediterranean to be Turkey. The Israelis basically, their stance on this is, you know, let the Turks and the Kurds do whatever they want. It's no skin off their nose. Though Israel is pretty close with Iraqi Kurdistan. The Kurdish Jews are in Iraq. They're not in Syria, and there are a lot of Kurdish Jews.
You hear that? You gotta listen carefully. That's the near silence of a peloton. But there's more to the sound than you think. That's the sound of a live studio cycling class happening right in your living room. That's the sound of 1,000 other riders pedaling with you at the same time. That's the sound of you pedaling faster and pushing yourself further.
Let's get it in 3, 2, 1.
That's the sound of New York's best instructors coming to you live every single day.
Come on, find that beat.
That's the sound of riders right next to you while you're still at home. This is the sound of giving it all. This is the sound of showing up. This is the sound of a new personal best. This is the sound of the best cardio machine on the planet. Bring home your own Peloton at onepeloton.com. Visit our showroom at Westfield Century City, Santa Monica, or Fashion Island to experience Peloton for yourself.
If you're a small business, first impressions can make all the difference. With Grasshopper, you get all the features of a phone system on your mobile phone.
We did store nukes at Incirlik in Turkey, but apparently we've taken them out of there.
And our desktop app. Set up your account in
And I'm queued up.
24/7 customer
Um,
your small business.
Got it up over a minute.
we
That's grasshopper.com/radio.
we had them in bunkers, which are visible on Google Earth, and probably after the coup last year, we took them out because Turkey was really stable up until Erdogan's recent wackiness. So now they are less wacky. I mean, they're a little more wacky.
Coming up on Sunday morning, you will listen to Espionage. All right, we're halfway through the month, so are you holding on to those?
All right, I can't fuck up the bumper this time.
We've got some great advice for the pros, and of course, great.
Sunday morning with Elizabeth Espinosa. Tomorrow morning at 5 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is a dark, sacred place. Brian sits in here live until midnight. And the Turks followed up a night of bombing specific targets in the Syrian city of Afrin, where the Syrian Kurds, the guys that are holding this huge area of Syria, in the west of Syria, where their headquarters are and all that. Did the Turks use American intelligence? Well, part of the problem for any American on the ground now in eastern Syria, either advising or accounting for weapons or whatever for the Syrian Kurds, the YPG, or the Syrian Defense Forces, the Arab army that we are training and supplying there in Syria, is that right about now, the Syrian Kurds are going to be pretty pissed off. And they're going to say, well, a month ago you say you're going to stop supplying us with weapons. Then magically your NATO ally, where you have a base, I mean, leaving the very base where you guys live, is bombing us. And you're telling us that you didn't provide any intelligence to them? And it doesn't matter what the facts are. It's that's what Americans are going to deal with, because the Kurds, like Iraqis, love dealing in rumor and complex conspiracies. And in the meantime, you know, if you're that American advising a YPG unit or a Syria Defense Force unit, you're sitting there saying, look, my ass is on the line here. I'm physically here backing you guys up. There's this separate group of you in this separate province far to the west, and we're not a part of that. You know we're not a part of that. So I don't know how that works. By the way, quick recommendation. National Geographic has a terrific show called Chain of Command. And it is really, 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 really good. And it is about the American advisors in Iraq over the past year or the last 6 months. And they've been filming it right through the liberation of Mosul. And it's really, really good. It shows American fire support officers on the ground in Mosul with their iPads and you know, all their targeting stuff. And the point of it is it's showing that, okay, well, here's a captain down here providing fire support to a Iraqi brigade, you know, of 5,000 or 6,000 guys. The American captain answers to an American lieutenant colonel who answers to the Operation Inherent Resolve commander, who answers to General Votel, who is the CENTCOM, Central Command commander in Tampa, Florida. And they got pretty unprecedented access. I mean, really amazing access. But some of the stuff on the battlefield is really, really good. But it's on National Geographic. It's called Chain of Command. So that's easy enough to understand for all of ye. But meanwhile, back in Syria, this is how Business Insider reported this earlier today. Turkey launched a massive air and ground campaign against U.S.-backed Kurds in Syria's Afrin province on Saturday, which its military is codenamed Operation Olive Branch, according to the state-run Anadolu agency. Turkish warplanes struck Kurdish observation posts and many other targets. The Anadolu news agency reported, while its ground forces launched at least 15 rounds of artillery. And actually, they fired a lot more than that. But so now, using old-school M60 tanks and infantry, the Turks, now on day 2 of this, have a pretty substantial ground force in there, and it looks like they're doing exactly what they did. Just to wrap this up, like I said a couple minutes ago, it looks like this is actually a seize and hold operation. This has nothing to do with taking out terrorists or some threat to Turkey. They are seizing this terrain from Syria. And ironically, and part of me wonders if this has anything to do with the timing of it, but it is the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I in 2018. November 11th of this year will be the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Erdogan and his party love to invoke how the Ottoman Empire was dismembered after the war because they lost. And a lot of the rhetoric for domestic consumption has to do with righting a historic wrong and bringing traditional Turks who have been living in Syria for 100 years because the border didn't respect them. They're going to right that wrong. And so Turkey might absorb these provinces from the Euphrates River west of the Mediterranean and just tell Syria, basically, what are you going to do about it? And then the other complexity about this is that, of course, Putin knew this. The Turks are pivoting towards Putin. They're not getting shot down by Russian aircraft. And Putin has probably told Assad, you know what, this is the new reality. You're going to have a smaller country. It's going to by about half. The International Hotel siege, I'll tell you about that right after this. In hour number 2, The Dark Secret Place, also streaming at unsheepyourself.com. So join us, won't you please, for the Q&A here during the commercials. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk.
In the age of fake news, KFI keeps anything ridiculous like we're Southern California.
I think it's still working.
24-hour local news and traffic station. We're not. We're the last one.
Yeah, the Russians accused us of making these really janky drones that did a swarm attack on the Russian airbase at Hamim in Syria, and we're denying it. And I mean, the main reason the Russians should not suspect us on that is because what do we get out of it? And however, did we train some SDF guys on how to make those drones and where to get that technology? Well, you don't have to, because and also it wasn't a drone swarm in the sense that the Department of Defense does, where F-18s drop dozens or hundreds of these little mini drones, and they all collectively can reconnoiter a valley, and they all work together and they network. These were not networked. These were basically, these were one after another, these UAVs with mortars attached to them, flying at the airbase. They were all given a GPS flight path, just like any off-the-shelf drone that you can buy. They were, given a GPS flight path from wherever they left to the airbase. So.
Health officials said last week there was a good chance the season was already beginning, but the newest numbers are nothing to sneeze at. One measure of the season is how many doctor or hospital visits are because of a high fever, cough, and other flu symptoms. 32 states reported high patient traffic last week, up from 26 the week before. It was the busiest week for flu symptoms in 9 years. Hawaii is the only state that does
Here's the here's the North Korean Spice Girl. She was part of the Moranbong band. I gotta find some of their music.
Tickets for the event started at $100,000 a pair and went up to $250,000 if you wanted to get some private time with the president. And that trip to Switzerland later this week, OMB Director Mick Mulvaney says it's up in the air.
Not said how long it thinks the shutdown will last. Traffic from your helpful SoCal Honda Traffic Center work zone in Fullerton on the 57.
That's on the southbound side from Melwood Avenue to Ball Road. Carpool and 2 left lanes are closed until 7. Area. In Bueno Park, every drive on the 5 north. This is between Beach Boulevard and Valley View.
I've reconnoitered the Chinese buffets in Palmdale.
Switch on the wall and it clatters and roars until you flip the switch back off. What it's supposed to be doing is removing humidity from the bathroom after you take a hot shower. But it doesn't do that. You know it, I know it, we both know it.
I gotta find, alright.
It's because if you don't, it puts a heavy load on your air conditioner. And it takes a lot
more
air conditioner to remove that moisture than it did for your water heater to put there. I want to replace that.
Moranbong Band. There we go.
Every time you turn it on, and it's so quiet that not even the dog can hear it. My dog Sadie is a big Wheaton Terrier, so it'll only lift her about.
This is bizarre. I gotta tweet this out. Yeah. And then I'm going to use the PC.
For Monday, partly cloudy skies, highs 60s near 70, and then warmer for Tuesday and Wednesday with the highs in inland areas low to mid 70s. And then clouds come back on Thursday. There should be a slight chance of showers on Thursday night, clearing out Friday. Right now, 46 in Mission VA, Health 50 in Seal Beach, 47 in Baltimore Park, and 37 in Santa Clarita. We lead local from KFI's 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael.
Dark secret place.
This radioactivity is coming from
Brian Suits on KFI.
I would bomb the shit out of
I'd bomb the shit out of them.
Dark secret place with Brian Suits.
More N-bong ban. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place, hour number 2. Brian Suits in here until midnight, and with great fanfare in Seoul today, the one of the North Korean Spice Girls, Hyun Sung-wol, who is who holds the rank of colonel in the North Korean People's Army. She's also in the Korean People's Workers' Party, the KWP, Korean Workers' Party, the name of the Communist Party in North Korea. And she was a delegate to their huge party confab last month and the whole thing. Anyway, she arrived in Seoul to inspect some of the concert venues that the South Koreans and North Koreans are headed full speed into a joint Olympic team. They have announced that they will, on February 8th, they will march into the stadium together. I believe the host country is the last one. Or the first. I don't know. But whatever it is, they're going to have a flag of unification. It's a white flag with a blue Korean peninsula, and there's no DMZ, there's no markings or whatever. So anyway, there's going to be a pretty big entourage of North Koreans, and of course they'll all be handlers, by the way. They're going to they're going to call themselves photographers and journalists and all that, but they're going to be security people, because they don't want, the ultimate embarrassment would be to have one of your athletes defect during these Olympics. They're supposed to be going, and they're being vetted for that, by the way. So are all the journalists and the whole thing. So anyway, Hyun Sung-wol came into South Korea today with a pretty big entourage, huge presence of South Korean police guarding her. She had an entourage of bodyguards, and she took Korail. South Korea has a really amazing intercity train system. I mean, it's as good or better than Germany's, which is just world class. And so anyway, she's taking Korail and got to see all the wonders of Seoul, the tall buildings, the whole thing. Here's a little example of her band. She leads this 5-woman group. And they wear sort of these pop miniskirt military uniforms. They're not actual uniforms. They're just sort of kind of like the Andrews sisters in World War II. Used to wear like a red, white, and blue sailor top, and a sailor hat. That's what these girls are doing. And here are some of their musical stylings. By the way, name of this song, Mother's Birthday. Apparently the lyrics, of course, are singing in Korean, but they are singing, so tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And here's the thing. I'm going to share this so you can see what I'm seeing. But they look like quintuplets. I mean, they were clearly selected to become the female singing group in North Korea. And they're all, I mean, as far as I can tell, they are identical height. They look, with only slight variations, identical. They're all identically proportioned, and they're all long-legged and very thin, lovely girls. They're pretty heavily processed. Honestly, I can't hear their voices here. This is another hit. This is called With Pride. And who knew 3 of them can play the violin and 2 of them are on guitar. And then one is playing drums here. So they're raging. So anyway, that is going to be part of your Olympic entertainment. I just tweeted out that a link to that video from The Guardian. And oh, by the way, you'll want to know this as well, is that Hyun Song-wol, when Kim Jong-un returned from his overseas education, he went to a junior high/high school in Switzerland, and he speaks English. He first, when he got back, dated the Korean Spice Girl, Hyun Sung-wol. And the course of their love was a fairly rocky one. It is not the woman that he married. However, and again, I'm not being racist on this, the woman that he married bore such a strong resemblance to her, to Hyun Sung-wol, that many thought that he married the North Korean Spice Girl. That is how similar they look. Maybe he has a thing for Asian chicks with black hair. I don't know. Like, that's not unusual. But so anyway, there were a bunch of artists who were executed in 2014. Boy, you talk about harsh critics. Kim Jong-un had a bunch of artists executed in 2014, and it was thought that she was one of them. But she was not. She escaped execution, and not only that, but has risen in North Korea in government circles. Like I say, holding officer rank in the North Korean People's Army, and then also now being, frankly, a fairly high-ranking communist official. So she is the one who's in South Korea, and she speaks for the government. She speaks for Kim Jong-un. So anyway, the South Koreans are sending a party to North Korea to inspect venues for, sort of an exchange concert and all that. There's still no indication that Kim Jong-un is going to South Korea for the Olympics. And it's highly unlikely that he would, for the main reason being that his image is so tightly controlled in North Korea. You always see him smiling. You always see everyone around him clapping maniacally or crying. Of course, everyone has a notebook. You have to write down everything he says. They don't have a problem with him smoking. He's smoking in half the pictures. And they don't have a problem with the optics of a big, porky 33-year-old being surrounded by these human skeletons. They don't have a problem with that. What they don't like, the reason he's not going to South Korea is because he's a fat ass, and he waddles, and he grunts when he stands up, and the whole thing. I mean, Dennis Rodman couldn't take selfies with him unless a North Korean photographer took them, and couldn't shoot video of him because the guy is embarrassed by his height and his fatness. And if you look, he always wears high heels. So he is not going to South Korea simply because he cannot manage his image. His younger sister, who amazingly looks like his wife and this pop star, she is probably going to go February 8th to the opening ceremony, and she'll represent the Kim family. So, all right, India, Pakistan, when we come back, don't worry, they're both nuclear powers, so sleep tight. Pardon me, I was supposed to hit the cough button. Brian Suits in here until midnight. Live until midnight on KFI, the Dark Secret Place, AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chapin with the news.
Boy has been shot and killed in Compton. 2 details given. Happened before 8 tonight on West Alliance. The boy was transported to a local hospital and later pronounced dead. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets
Uh-oh. 7-year-old boy killed in Compton. I didn't catch if that was an OIS.
Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock may have thought about targeting Southern California before his rampage of 58 people. Paddock's web searches last May apparently included tourism.
Hey, but you know what I should do for YouTube is that I'm going really hard on the no-carb diet. I do this every couple of years. And, I mean, let's be honest, I can lose probably 30 or 40 pounds. But I am doing the no carb thing, and what happens when you do that, when you eliminate carbs from your diet, about about 3 days into it, you use your last carbohydrate and you begin burning fat for energy, and you go into what's called ketosis, which is the way our bodies evolved. By the way, we didn't have carbohydrates. We didn't have complex carbohydrates, 10,000 years ago. Strawberries, if you've ever seen a real strawberry, a wild strawberry, they're that big. And apples were this big. We didn't have, that kind of fruit and things like that. So anyway, for us old guys, the great part about it is that not ketoacidosis. That's different. No, this is just ketosis, where you're peeing out the ketones, which is what's left when the fat is burned. And so anyway, your energy level goes through the roof. That's the really cool part. Yeah, it's a really good way to lose weight. So I want to motivate all you old guys to do that.
This report is brought to you by the TJ Martell Foundation. KFI in the Sky helps get you their pastor. I'm Jackie Laufer.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Church, asking you to join me in the fight against leukemia, cancer, and AIDS.
And
Your support helps facilitate cutting-edge research that will lead to more effective treatments and save more lives. Visit TJ Martell.
And vodka has no carbs. No, what book? I know all about Linebacker 2, but what book? Is it called 11 Days of Christmas? Yeah, but basically there's 2 beers that you can get away with. Bud Select 55 only has like 2 carbs, but it's only 2.4% alcohol. So, as the British say, why is American beer like having sex in a canoe? Because it's fucking so close to water. The other one is Michelob Ultra, which, whatever, you can get away with 1 or 2, but but the thing is, you want to get your carbs down to 20 grams per day. So you definitely, if giving up alcohol is your problem, then you got bigger fish to fry. But if you want to deal with that later on, you can just drink vodka and you're fine. And deal with your alcoholism later.
Switch today at biosbyfrontier.com. Limited time offer, equipment and other fees apply. After 1 year, charge for services received. Speed not guaranteed. Fios marks are owned by Price and Trademark Services, LLC, used under license.
If you plan on selling or buying a home, listen to this important message. Rex Real Estate is selling homes in Los Angeles for 2%. Total. That's right, only 2%. Not the outrageous 6% traditional real estate agents charge. Leading sellers, on average, $25,000 as a fully licensed brokerage. Rex lists on top real estate websites like Zillow and Trulia. Rex uses advanced digital marketing strategies to find qualified buyers for your home. To see if you qualify, call 213-988-6-REX. 213-988-6-REX.
You ready?
Your dedicated Rex team handles everything from
how much time?
negotiating offers and closing paperwork.
1 minute.
Oh, okay.
Just 2%, you've got to sell your home with Rex. To see if you qualify,
I don't want to play the Killers.
213-988-6739. CALDRE license 01976010.
All your favorite music, all your favorite stations, all free. That's iHeartRadio. All your favorite music.
Yeah, I'm good.
And iHeartRadio is all your favorite stations. Thousands of the best radio stations from across the country. Plus, iHeartRadio is free. Download the app today. All your favorite music, all your favorite stations, all free.
Coming up on Sunday morning. All right, we're halfway through the month. So holding on to those New Year's resolutions. If not, don't worry. We've got some great advice for the pros, and of course, your brain.
Sunday morning with Elizabeth Espinosa. Tomorrow morning at 5 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
When you get the rhythm and the time, when they break it down,
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here live until midnight. And all right, so I think we've covered we've put talcum powder on one hotspot there, Turkey re-invading Syria. And maybe a little more on Korea here in just a second. But two things happening sort of in the same part of the world. The the Indo-Pak border in Kashmir and Kabul. First with Kabul. Afghan security forces say they have regained control of the luxury hotel, the International Hotel in Kabul, after it was stormed by gunmen. At least 5 civilians were killed, 6 were injured in the siege. The Interior Ministry said early Sunday morning there. 3 of the attackers have been killed. A ministry spokesman said they suspect that 2 are hiding in the hotel. More than 150 guests were rescued. The gunmen burst into the Intercontinental Hotel on Saturday evening, Kabul time, shooting at guests and staff and detonating grenades. Yeah, they only killed 5 people. The spokesman said 1 foreigner was among those killed. Special forces battled to secure the hotel and rescue people trapped inside. No group has said it carried out the attack, but the Taliban targeted the Intercontinental Hotel in 2011. Saturday's attack came just days after the U.S. Embassy in Kabul issued a warning about hotels in the city. The embassy wrote on their own website, quote, "We are aware of reports that extremist groups may be planning an attack against hotels in Kabul. These groups may also be targeting public gatherings, demonstrations, government facilities, transportation, markets, and places where foreigners are known to congregate." Close quote. Another Interior Ministry spokesman told the Agence France-Presse, that news agency, that an investigation had begun into how the attackers had breached security, which was handed over to a private company 2 weeks ago. He said, quote, "They probably used a back door in the kitchen to enter." The Intercontinental is a state-owned hotel which often hosts weddings, conferences, and political gatherings. And as with much of the Third World, it is the hotel to stay at. And so when American CIA, NSA, whoever, when Americans come in there and they're on temporary duty on TDY, they stay at the Intercontinental. They get a per diem, the whole thing, because it's up to American standards. This is something that we do. I think it's kind of foolish, but we do it. And the people who primarily drive this are never military. They are from state, CIA, and other intelligence agencies, and they leave Washington for a 2-week or a 1-month TDY, and they won't stay in a hotel, a grade down from from an American hotel. They have to stay in the best hotel in Kabul. And so it's an obvious target. Now, it's the same. There's a hotel like that in Islamabad, Pakistan. And everybody knew that the hotel was filled with Americans. So guess what? It gets truck bombed. The best hotel, when I worked as a private contractor in Djibouti, the best hotel is the Kempinski. And it's a great hotel. Beautiful hotel. It's a Western hotel. And the buffet was awesome. The domestic service is up to American standards. You dial 0, and they show up with more towels, or whatever. It's great. But and Djibouti is a very, 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 very secure place. But it still required 5 shows of the ID to get in. And ultimately, there was another cheaper hotel that, frankly, offered better security because there were no Americans in the hotel. And this is just something that we do. And it was the same in Baghdad. In Baghdad, the Rashid Hilton was in the green zone, but it was just on the edge of the green zone, and it was a prominent feature on the Baghdad skyline. So everybody, the insurgents had infiltrated the green zone through, you know, getting people who work in the green zone to give them information and all that. Besides, they knew Baghdad. They knew every inch of Baghdad. And so the Rashid Hilton, which is where the CNN people stayed, the Fox News people, they all stayed at the Rashid Hilton. And so it got rocketed. And it's like, well, you know, there are other hotels in Baghdad, but you want to stay in the green zone or whatever. But it's the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul will continue to be attacked. The question now is it the Taliban repeating the attack, or is it the new ISIS-K? ISIS is in Afghanistan. They're making a splash, getting a lot of young men to join them instead of the Taliban. They're called ISIS Khorasan. Is it them? Well, here's the thing. My first reaction here is this wasn't thrown together in a couple days. And if it's not thrown together in a couple days, then it requires some planning and it requires some knowledge of the floor plan, maybe even reconnoitering, getting inside, you know, the whole thing. After all that, they get in and they only kill 5 people. And that doesn't sound like the ISIS that we're used to. But the guys were in a running gunfight for hours and hours and hours, and 3 are dead, and 2 are still either in the hotel or they've escaped. But it's just that it's grenades and AKs. It seems a bit haphazard if your goal is mass casualties. So we'll see. Anyway, the Taliban are busy fighting ISIS themselves, along with the Afghan government and the U.S. Right now, one of our primary missions in Afghanistan is fighting ISIS, so that ISIS doesn't take advantage of the chaos in Afghanistan and rise up there. So, all right. When we come back, India and Pakistan. So, when 2 countries that have nuclear weapons go to war, is it an automatic? Is it a gimme that they're going to use nuclear weapons? What is the line? When India and Pakistan have gone to war in the past, India had the monopoly on nuclear weapons since 1972, but Pakistan, famously through their nuclear scientist A.Q. Khan, achieved nuclear weapons sometime in the 90s. So does that mean, here's the one case where you can say nuclear weapons are not a deterrent for conventional war, because this is not like America and Vietnam, a proxy war against the Russians. This is India and Pakistan going to war with each other. And yes, they both have nuclear weapons. So what's the point? Since one's not going to lose, or let the other one, or you know, one side's not going to lose without using the nuclear weapons. Why do they do this? So, the latest in India, Pakistan, and also a quick little explainer on how other countries authorize the use of nuclear weapons. We went through this last Saturday with Hawaii and that fake scare and, you know, the whole thing. But how do India and Pakistan actually make the decision to use nuclear weapons? We'll be back with that right after this. It is a Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here until midnight at KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chapin with the news.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Trump will not negotiate on immigration reform. Stop playing games.
No, in America, yeah, the Indians still fly the Harrier, and they have their first indigenous carrier that's going to be it's in the water, but it's going to be completed out, and it'll be in service by 2020, and it'll probably have Harriers on it. We tried to get the Indians to buy F-35s, but they're all in with the Russian PAC-FA, the Russian 5th generation fighter. All the nations that border China want a air superiority fighter. So Russia and India are co-developing the Sukhoi PAC-FA. Their first customer is Vietnam, which, by the way, still also borders China and has gone to war with China in 1979, 1994. Yeah, we still have the Wild Weasel anti air defense mission. The SEED mission, the suppression of enemy air defense mission.
Brian was talking about the Intercontinental Hotel in Afghanistan has been attacked. At least 3 shooters attacked the hotel in the capital, Kabul, around 9 p.m. local time. This is say it looked like the shooters were aiming at guests. Afghan officials say 8 people have been killed, including 3 shooters and 1 foreigner. At least 6 other people have been wounded. Traffic from your HealthPost, SoCal, hot the traffic center stall in Anaheim on the 5.
That's on the southbound side of Disney Way, taking up your right lane, slowing up your drive from Lincoln Avenue. Good news in South LA, 110 North, Apple 105, an earlier accident has cleared, but you're looking at stop and go traffic from El Segundo Boulevard. And a crash in South El Monte, listed on the 60 East at Rhodesia Boulevard, taking up your right lane. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Jack Laffer.
Hey, it's Sharon Bellio. It's a new year, and people everywhere are resolving to make 2018 a better, healthier year. And a great way to start is by getting a good night's sleep. But for those of you who suffer from sleep apnea or live with someone who does, it can be difficult to get the restful sleep you need. If you or a loved one has sleep apnea and can't get relief from CPAP, there is another treatment option available. It's called Inspire. Inspire is a revolutionary FDA-approved implantable device for sleep. Inspire delivers mild stimulation to keep your airway open throughout the night, giving you and your partner healthier, happier 2018.
Yeah, the new Valor. They need to come up with a better name for that. Yeah, it's going to be an Army machine. The Army is the only service that doesn't operate Ospreys. We use Chinooks for long range helo missions. Also, the Marine Corps is selling their Super Cobras, the Whiskies. The Marine Corps is all committed to the Zulu model, the H-1 Zulu. So they're selling the Ws, the Whiskies. To whom, we don't know. Probably South Korea would be my guess. South Korea operates the Cobras, and they love the Cobras. Turkey does too, but we're not on great terms with Turkey these days.
Donate your car today with 1-877-CARS for Kids. We're a recognized 501c3 charity organization, so you'll receive a maximum tax deduction. What's more, you'll receive a vacation voucher of 3 days and 2 nights. Also on the web at carsforkids.com.
1-877-CARS for Kids. Donate your car today.
Remember, that's CARS with a K.
At Spectrum Business, we believe in
Security?
today. That's why we deliver over 99.9% network reliability and don't believe in contracts. Don't have them, won't make you sign one. That's right. Spectrum Business, the provider of internet, voice, and TV solutions for your business, has no contracts. No contracts to get our best price. No contracts to get our fastest internet starting speeds. No contracts to get advanced business quotes. And if your current provider has you stuck in a contract, we'll even get you out of it. So what are you waiting for? Take control and find out what it's like to work with a company that will earn your business every day. Now that's the way business should
All right, I'm queued up.
9012 or visit business.spectrum.com and get Spectrum Business today. You'll get the best internet and voice for your business with no contracts. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
I usually know how I'm going to feel about a certain story, and Gary does not have the same feelings a lot of the time.
He tends to have a more pessimistic view of humanity than I do. She'll slap some sense into me and make me realize that we're not all great people down inside.
Gary and Shannon.
I'm there to make him a better person.
Weekdays at 10 a.m. on KFI.
An iHeart radio station.
KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian sits in here until midnight live, and I know you thought I was going to play Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, but that's my driving home music. Maybe I'll play that for our last bumper. Meanwhile, in Kashmir, there's lead in the air. Wink, wink. At Dark Secret Place, by the way, is my Twitter feed. And if you want to get in on the live stream, that is unsheepyourself.com. Indian and Pakistani troops traded fire Saturday along their volatile frontier in Kashmir, killing at least 5 civilians and a soldier in the latest escalation of violence in the disputed region. The deaths on both sides of the border came as the nuclear-armed rivals exchanged blame for initiating the hostilities, which have involved the shelling of villages and border posts and are in violation of a 2003 ceasefire accord. In 2003, the Pak-India conflict was several weeks long, and thousands of rounds of artillery traded between the two forces. Lots of troops killed, but it never escalated. And in 2003, Pakistan was a nuclear power, and India's been a nuclear power since 1972. Today's fighting is the 4th straight day of deadly confrontation between the neighbors. India and Pakistan have a long history of bitter relations over Kashmir, a Himalayan territory claimed by both in its entirety. They fought 2 of their 3 wars over the region since they gained independence from British colonial rule in 1947. And there's an interesting side note there that both sides maintain garrisons at very high altitudes. I mean, over 10,000 feet. And if you're flying in a military aircraft, you need to be on oxygen from the deck up to whatever. But at 10,000 feet, oxygen starts getting thin. And so the Pakistani side had better equipped guys, and they would rotate every couple weeks. On the Indian side, they weren't as well equipped, and men were going up there for 1 year. So they were living for 1 year at like 14 to 15,000 feet, and they were losing brain cells because of the lack of oxygen. But anyway, they fight up there. Artillery flies differently up there. Bullets fly differently. But they're up there fighting. And it's escalating. Pakistan's foreign ministry on Saturday summoned the deputy Indian High Commissioner to lodge a protest over what it called unprovoked ceasefire violations. And you know what should calm everybody down would be one side threatening to use nuclear weapons against the other side. The Pakistani Foreign Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif on Saturday issued a nuclear threat to India. This was last Saturday, by the way, while responding to a statement of Army Chief General Bipin Rawat. The Foreign Minister said, quote, "Very irresponsible statement by Indian Army Chief, not befitting his office. Amounts to invitation for nuclear encounter. If that is what they desire, they are welcome to test our resolve. The general's doubt would swiftly be removed, inshallah." Close quote. On Friday, the Indian general, Bipin Rawat, during a media briefing in Delhi, said the force was ready to call Pakistan's nuclear bluff and cross the border to carry out any operation if asked by the government. And then they went on a tweeting spree. But so the deal is, in the U.S., and believe it or not, in the old Soviet Union, and presumably in today's Russia, there was a lot of fail-safes in the nuclear chain, just like we have. But ultimately, because of the nature of nuclear weapons, being put on missiles and stuff, it requires a quick decision for retaliation, right? So that's why the American president has, at all times with him, he has the laminated card with the code letters and all that, and he has a way to communicate with the Secretary of Defense that's never broken. If the SecDef is on the other side of the world, the president can call him on a secure line immediately, and then they have to concur on the launch codes and the whole thing. From that point forward, it's a one-man show. The U.S. president is authorized to release nuclear weapons. You can't call a committee, and get a decision in 30 minutes. It needs to be done, quick, right? In Russia, they didn't have single release authority. They actually had several guys who had to concur, but they did it quickly, just like us. But they never handed it off to just one guy. Like Brezhnev could never have done it. They actually had more human safeguards to one man doing it than we do. Well, in Pakistan, They have devolved nuclear authority, launch release authority, down to Army Corps commanders, and they're treating their nukes as if they're a piece of artillery, which is kind of odd. Not how we would do it. But for the Pakistanis, they look at the conflict that they would use it in. Pakistan's not going to nuke Belgium, and they're not going to nuke Bahrain. Their nukes are for India. Their nukes are to level the playing field for the inevitable bi-decadal war with India. And the Pakistani army, who funded the research program that led to the Pakistan bomb and the rockets and the whole thing, they've never given up their nukes. They have the authority. And the Pakistani army is an institution, kind of like the KGB was. Now the FSB is in Russia. They're almost a state within a state. It's very much like in India. It is a family business, and you see the town where Bin Laden was killed is the retirement community for high-ranking Pakistani army officials. They have a fiefdom, and part of their fiefdom is the nuclear weapons. So they have never approved of a system where the civilian prime minister or president of Pakistan has the release authority without army approval or consent. And then they also have, as I say, devolved authority down to local commanders, which is really weird to us. Because if you're fighting a war of survival or whatever, and you have one commander of a corps with 3 divisions, and he doesn't have nuclear weapons in his corps, but the guy next to you does, and he just decides, well, there's a bridge, the Indians are using it, I'm going to nuke it. And there's nothing stopping him. India has a very well thought out nuclear release authority, and also keep in mind, time of flight between Pakistan and India, I mean, we're talking 8 or 9 minutes. You know, time of flight, ICBMs from Montana to the Soviet Union, you know, that's 35 to 40 minutes. Submarines off the coast of the U.S., 6 to 8 minutes. But they wouldn't be part of an initial strike anyway. And so for the Pakistanis, they had to come up with a system that reflected the peculiarities of their conflict, that they're right next door to each other. And so they just said, well, you know what? Let's just treat these things like artillery. And so does that mean that if this thing escalates, that a local commander just might say, all right, fire up the missile, fire up the nuke? It hasn't so far. That's what we know. And that India and Pakistan have gone on these multi-week mini wars several times over the past 30 years, since the last time they had a big war. And they seem to manage these things that after a couple weeks, they just kind of cool down. And then they have a ceasefire. But it's an ongoing conflict since 1947, and they have found some kind of magic middle ground where they don't release their nuclear weapons. So maybe the nukes are what's keeping these little conflicts as little conflicts. But all right, we'll be back with some last little tidbits and knickknacks when we come back. It's the Dark Secret Place one more time. Brian Suits in here live until midnight, KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news.
LA fire says a construction worker lighting a cigarette may have set off an explosion of fire in the garage in the Mount Washington area that seriously hurt a man said to be in his early 60s. City Fire's Brian Humphrey described the explosion as dramatic. Police in Riverside say they're looking for the shooter to kill the man outside his home, and what cops are calling a drive-by attack. This happened before 3 a.m. on Eucalyptus Avenue. No word on a possible motive. The National Olympic Committee says 22 athletes.
Yeah, the funniest thing is if you search YouTube for China-India troops snowball fight, there's these bizarre videos of Indian and Chinese troops, at 16,000 feet throwing snowballs at each other.
The people at LifeLock want to remind you there's a lot more to identity theft than you may have thought. Monitoring your credit or checking your bank account statements offers some protection, but it's only a limited view of what's actually going on with your identity. You may not be able to detect if personal information is for sale on the dark web.
I think the Eagles are going to really actually spank the Vikings, and I'm hoping for a upset with the Steelers.
Identity restoration specialists will work to fix the problem. Now, of course, no one can prevent all identity theft or monitor every transaction, every business.
Tomorrow night,
Join now, get 10% off.
we're going to put Have You Seen a Deer on hiatus for a little bit. And I'm going to do a much more specific LA call out, which is Have You Seen a Free Couch? I've never seen so many free couches around here. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Patriots. I want to see an upset. I want to see Tom Brady angry, but it's not going to happen. The Patriots are going to kick their ass. So yeah, have you seen a free couch? Then what was the other deal? Well, but do people, I think people want Kashmir, but I won't play Kashmir.
Did you know the Auto Club offers competitive rates on auto insurance? Go to AAA.com/insurance for a free quote today and find out how much.
Oh, Echo and the Bunnymen.
Through the Auto Club. Visit AAA.com.
Can't go wrong with Echo and the Bunnymen. I'm going to do 7 C's. Yep. I love XTC. Love XTC. Great band. But you know, they were rarely in concert because Andy Partridge, the lead singer, is freaked out. He's a introvert. He hates crowds.
Hello, I'm Fletcher Jones Jr. In 2017, 9,000 Southern Californians made their Mercedes-Benz dreams come true at Fletcher Jones Motor Cars. I'm proud to say we're still the #1 dealership for the 19th consecutive year. This is your last chance to take advantage of our 25th anniversary sale.
So Psycho Mike Catherwood is out at KBC. He's not working. You know what? The Los Lobos song I love is One Time, One Night in America. In fact, I might get that.
And if you're flying on Alaska Airlines anytime in the near future, you might notice something a little bit different. That's because employees across the company, all 19,000 of them, will soon be wearing new uniforms designed by Seattle's Lily.
Yeah, so Psycho Mike is out at KBC, but he was leaving anyway. Yep, all queued up. If any of you are Kevin and Bean listeners, and you know Ralph Garman left, they couldn't afford him anymore, then you'll like. Well, Dr. Drew and my friend Lauren Savant are now the noon to 3 show on KBC. Yeah, Lauren is permanent. But if you miss Psycho Mike on K-Rock on Kevin and Bean, then you will be pleasantly surprised on Monday.
And see if they can help you. Call 888-329-2525. 888.
Yeah, Lauren, in a perfect world, Lauren and I would be working together here at KFI. We would be doing a show here.
TimeshareFreedomGroup.com. Coming up on Sunday morning, all right, we're halfway through the month, so are you holding on to those New Year's resolutions? If not, don't worry. We've got some great advice from the pros, and of course, your price.
Sunday morning with Elizabeth Espinosa. Tomorrow morning at 5 on KFI AM 640.
More stimulating talk.
It's such a great song. It was the opening song in Colors. Remember the... You're right about the people who run Fox 11. They are idiots, because the Lawrence Yvonne Bobby DeCastro 5 p.m. show was terrific. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here one last time, and then we hand it over to Coast to Coast, and then Elizabeth Espinosa tomorrow morning, and then the Jesus Show, Leo Laporte again, and then Mo Kelly at 6, and then Super Hyperlocal Sunday, Dr. Wendy 4 to 6, and Mo 6 to 8, and then Super Hyperlocal Sundays from 8 to 10 tomorrow, and we're gonna have a lot to talk about by the sound of it already this weekend. So some little notes and asides. The Marine Corps has been flying the AH-1 Cobra since they adopted it in the Vietnam War, and they have put technology and new engines, and they've run out of letters. The one of the two last iterations of the familiar Cobra gunship was the AH-1W, the whiskey model, which was a very advanced, could fire Hellfire missiles just like an Apache, the whole thing. And now the Marine Corps is finally on the Z, the Zulu, the AH-1 Zulu. So, so the deal is that the Marine Corps is getting rid of the whiskeys, the Ws, and they're going to sell them to somebody. And leading candidates are probably South Korea. South Korea loves the Cobras. Possibly some European NATO countries. Probably not Turkey. Turkey loves Cobras. A lot of their Cobras are long in tooth, but we're probably not going to sell. They're not exactly our buddies right now, unless there's something in it for us. So anyway, the Marine Corps getting rid of the Cobras. Will the Marine Corps ever adopt the Apache? They're not even discussing that. The Marine Corps is going to stick with the Cobra gunship for the next 10 years. It's a proven airframe, and the Marine Corps has gotten all they want out of it. It cannot do as much as the Apache. The Apache helicopter has been, since the late 80s, the premier attack helicopter on Earth. And the Europeans have tried, but they have not succeeded in an indigenous attack helicopter that can do as much as the Apache, which is why the Israelis fly it, the British fly it, the Egyptians fly it, the Saudis fly it. Anyone who wants a top-notch attack helicopter gets the Apache. But the Marine Corps hangs on to their Cobras. And also, a little note, an Apache crashed as part of an exercise at Fort Irwin earlier this morning. Both aircrew were killed in that. So I have a rundown of earlier I was reading you the story about the Korean pop star, who is the North Korean pop star, who is in South Korea to inspect venues. Hyun Sung-wol, who used to date Kim Jong-un. She is a high party official now. And she is part of the Morabong band, the state-supported pop group in North Korea. Well, and then she was rumored to have been killed in a purge of artists in 2014. Well, so here's a rundown of some of Kim Jong-un's more prominent executions. Of course, his half-brother, Kim Jong-nam, because the rumors were that if China ever did a regime change, Kim Jong-nam, his half-brother, would be the face of the new regime. He'd be the new guy in power installed by the Chinese. The half-brother was assassinated at an airport in Malaysia in February 2017 with chemical spray. Ri Yong-jin, North Korea's top education official, was executed and educated in August of 2016 with a high-caliber machine gun for falling asleep during a meeting, according to reports. This was one of the guys killed by an anti-aircraft gun, a 23 millimeter anti-aircraft machine gun. And it is as arbitrary as that. If you're saying he fell asleep during a meeting, how big of a meeting could it be? If Kim Jong-un is in the room and he's talking and you fall asleep, you're dead. You're supposed to be intently listening to everything he says, or what his dad used to say, or what his grandpa used to say. You stand there with a notebook and you write everything down. You sure as hell don't fall asleep. Then Hyung Yong-choi, the defense minister, was shot also by anti-aircraft guns in front of hundreds of onlookers in April of 2015 for falling asleep during an event and not carrying out instructions, according to South Korean intelligence officers. General Jang Sung-taek, December 2013, Kim Jong-un's uncle and a leading general, was accused of being a counter-revolutionary and executed. There were reports that many members of his family were also killed, which would be the SOP with the Korean regime, is that they have the 3-generation policy, that if they're going to kill you or jail you, they jail your children and your parents, and they do 3 generations. But this was a guy who also had ties to China, and this was the first clue that Kim was killing people who had hotlines to Beijing. Kim Kyung-wee, this was General Jang's wife, also Kim Jong-un's aunt. She was apparently poisoned in May of 2014 after complaining about her husband's execution, according to defectors. Yeah, you don't want to do that. You want to stay on. You want to sit on your objections to your hubby's execution. Oh Sang-han, it was also General Jang's ally, the guy killed by the anti-aircraft gun. The deputy public security minister was executed with a flamethrower in April 2014. And Kim Chol, a vice minister in the army, was apparently executed with a mortar round in April 2014 for drinking and carousing in the official mourning period for Kim Jong-il's death. So as you see, there's little room for error in North Korea's upper management, but they're undergoing a period of aggressive growth. And that's the part where the Joker breaks the pool cue in half. And he says, we're having tryouts. All right, Super Hyperlocal Sunday tomorrow at 8 p.m. We'll have a new feature. We're getting rid of Have You Seen a Deer? It's going on hiatus. We are now going to do Have You Seen a Free Couch? Because there seems to be an outbreak of free couches in the LA area. All right, this concludes our live stream. And I'll do a YouTube stream tomorrow. We'll get a little more information on North Korea. Some breaking news, by the way, that they have agreed. South Korea has agreed here in the final stages of training before the Olympics that they will send an advanced team to North Korea for joint ski training. North Korea has a ski resort, so they're really jumping in with both feet on this whole let's be buddies again now thing. So. Who knows? Either it's an elaborate ruse or they reunify or something. I don't know. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hector in the engineer booth, Michael Chapin, and all of you watching on the YouTube. We'll see you here tomorrow at 8 p.m. This is the Dark Secret Place for the 20th of January, 2018 on KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk.
We'll never try to tell you we're Southern California's only 24-hour local news and traffic station. That would be fake news. We're just the best at it.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
24-hour news.
All right. This concludes our broadcast day.